The President versus Speaker Pelosi. The latest on the growing partisan divide threatening to grind Washington to a halt. Plus, the state of pro-life Democrats as the battle over abortion in America heats up. And peace in the Middle East. How the issue of Israel plays in the 2020 presidential election. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The Speaker of the House is claiming the president, quote, wants to be impeached. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, the war between the president and congressional Democrats is reaching a fever pitch as hopes for an agreement over a plan for infrastructure crumble. Amber Strong has more on this brewing battle in tonight's top story.
President Trump is hitting back at what he calls the Democrats' rage narrative. This as Speaker Pelosi works to wrangle members of her party clamoring for impeachment proceedings.
This is irresponsible.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy maintains that Speaker Pelosi's House is out of order.
It was the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, who called a special meeting of the entire majority of her party to meet just about impeachment.
The Speaker insists her party is in line, taking a wait-and-see approach to any attempt to impeach the president.
You want to believe that there's all this unease in our caucus. That simply isn't the truth.
Pelosi looking to turn the tables on President Trump.
The White House is just crying out for impeachment.
After the Speaker accused President Trump of engaging in a cover-up hours before a planned meeting on infrastructure Tuesday.
The whole thing with Russia was a hoax.
President hit back from the Rose Garden.
Instead of walking in happily into a meeting, I walk in to look at people that had just said that I was doing a cover-up. I don't do cover-ups.
Speaker Pelosi called him a master of distraction, suggesting the president is unhinged.
This time, another temper tantrum. Again, I pray for the President of the United States. I wish that his family or his administration or his staff would have an intervention for the good of the country.
Presidential counselor Kellyanne Conway said the meeting was disingenuous from the start.
Why talk about a cover-up? It's nonsense, and then think you're going to come here and get productive work done.
Conway described the speaker's behavior in response to the president's walkout.
I talk to the president, not to staff. She treats me as she might treat her maid.
Speaker Pelosi claims that altercation is irrelevant.
I'm not going to talk about her. I responded as the Speaker of the House to the President of the United States.
As the I word has changed from infrastructure to impeachment, Speaker Pelosi says she'd still be game for another meeting with the White House. When asked if she would change her rhetoric as to not provoke President Trump, she says she wouldn't be buying into the president's excuse. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Amber. Well, joining me now is CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. David, we just heard Nancy Pelosi say that she's standing by those cover-up comments. The president, unlikely to budge. There's a long time before we get to the 2020 election, and there's still a lot of work that the government has to do on behalf of the American public. So who blinks first here?
I don't think anybody blinks first. I think we have a staring contest all the way through 2020, and then the election decides it, and that person will blink first. In other words, the one who wins or loses. Well, I guess the person that would blink would be the one that loses. But I had a conversation with Mark Levin about this today. He's the author of Unfreedom of the Press, new book out. #1 in the country, by the way. I'm sure he would want me to say that. We talked about this cover-up language by Nancy Pelosi, the back and forth between Pelosi and Trump. Here's what he had to say. Have a look.
First thing Nancy Pelosi said was the president is obstructing justice. Now, first of all, it's not a criminal proceeding, so he's not obstructing justice. It would be obstructing Congress. And he's not obstructing Congress. He is standing up for his branch of the government, which he's free to do, which every president has done, and he's taking them to court. How is that a constitutional crisis? They're trying to manufacture the image. It's called, and I write in the book, pseudo-events. This is not news, it's a fake event. As the president would say, it's fake news. But they're trying to create the impression with the American people through the media. It's all done for the media, and try to influence the American people to drive down the president's ratings for the next election, or hopefully if they can get him under 40%, maybe down to 30%, then they might move on him with impeachment. They might anyway.
More from Mark Levin tomorrow, Friday, on Faith Nation. But he has a lot to say about not just Pelosi and Trump, but about how the media has treated not just Trump, but the Republican Party in general.
Looking forward to hearing more of that interview. Yeah. Impeachment helped to boost President Clinton in his re-election bid. Is President Trump goading Democrats here?
You know, I don't know if I would use the word goading. Look, no president wants to be impeached, okay? But he also realizes that it looks like this is kind of where they're going. So he's like, well, you know what? If you're going to impeach me, I'll tell you what, politically, it kind of worked for me. Why? Bill Clinton. Back in the 90s, we've talked about this. I actually looked up the numbers because I did some work today.
And you're a busy man today.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, yeah, right. And the work that I did was this. Bill Clinton's numbers increased from 63% approval to 73% approval after impeachment. Republican Party went down 10 points during the process.
Real quickly, I got to ask you, where's all this headed? Does this have to be settled in the courts?
It will be settled in the courts eventually, but it'll take a long, drawn-out process to do so. It'll be through 2020. I will say this. How do we approach a potential constitutional crisis? Because we've heard those words. Here's what will happen, John. We'll know we're at a constitutional crisis when the Supreme Court rules on one of these cases, and Donald Trump or Congress, most likely Donald Trump, could say, I'm not going to abide by the Supreme Court's ruling. If that's the case, we're in uncharted territory. We're past a red line, and you'll have me on nonstop during Faith Nation.
We'll be prepared for those nonstop interviews, David. CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Sean.
Well, a newly reintroduced bill aims to protect abortion access across America. Democratic lawmakers today announcing they will again put forward the Women's Health Protection Act. The measure has gone before Congress every year since 2013, but recent pro-life laws passed in several states have renewed a call from abortion advocates to protect the procedure and Roe v. Wade, the law that legalized it.
We need to sound the alarm. In fact, we face a 5-alarm fire in the danger to women's reproductive rights. And we need to command the urgency and immediacy that all of our lives are at risk.
Abortion increasingly has become a big topic on the 2020 campaign trail, with Democratic hopefuls vowing to fight against pro-life laws. New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand went as far to say some of these laws go against Christian values.
As president, I will represent all our voters. But if you are a person of a deep Christian faith, one of the tenets of our faith is free will. One of the tenets of our democracy is that we have a separation of church and state, and under no circumstances are we supposed to be imposing our faith on other people. It's against our Constitution, and it's against Christian faith.
Well, joining me now is former Democratic delegate Justin Giboney, now with the group The AND Campaign. Justin, thanks for being with us.
How's it going, John? Thanks for having me.
Justin, you just heard that sound from Kirsten Gillibrand, essentially saying pro-life measures are against Christian faith. Agree or disagree?
I couldn't disagree more. One thing I will say is that what is part of the Christian faith is compassion, and having compassion for those women who might be in crisis situations. I think we can do that at times a little bit better. Even if you look at a state like Alabama, you have a maternal mortality rate of about, I think, 5 times for black women more than it is for white women. So those are things to take in consideration. But to say that a pro-life measure is not biblical, I think is going a little bit too far.
As a pro-life Democrat, you're not in the majority, but you still don't stand alone. So what's it like for you and others who share your position in the current climate as it relates to abortion?
It can be frustrating because you're seeing this conversation controlled by narratives that aren't necessarily accurate, and we're not getting to the bottom of this conversation. Often when you hear abortion talked about, on one side it's talked about as if there is no baby that exists at all. On another side, we're not necessarily taking in consideration those women, again, who are in crisis situations. So what I would like people to do is set the talking points and narratives aside for a bit and focus on the reality of what's going on, which can be somewhat complicated, but first and foremost, we have to protect life.
We're seeing this progressive push within the Democratic Party, but particularly among Democratic leaders. Are you concerned that the pro-life voice within your party is getting drowned out?
I'm very concerned because even if you're not talking, so the pro-life voice within the Democratic Party is probably about a third of the party. So that's a significant amount. But not even the folks who consider themselves pro-life. You have to think of the folks, which is about 60%, who are against abortions after 20 weeks. So what we're seeing here is the Democratic Party having to decide whether they're going to be for the people on this issue or whether they're going to let kind of a handful of far left interest groups kind of run and and control the direction of where this is going to go.
So, Justin, how do you change the game here?
Well, I think it starts with people being courageous and calling and just really truth-telling to say, hey, there is a baby involved in this conversation, but at the same time, we have to make sure that women that are in crisis situations are taken care of. And when we have high maternal mortality rates like we do in Alabama, we can't just talk about the abortions. We have to talk about those other issues as well. And when we can do both of those things, I think you see the compassion and the conviction that come together to make the Christian point of view in the public square.
Justin, real quickly here, Kristen Day of Democrats for Life warned that messages like the ones we've heard from Senator Gillibrand will isolate pro-life Democrats and turn them away from the ballots altogether in 2020. Do you see that happening?
I think you run that risk. And we have to realize that a lot of these candidates are looking for a way to get their voices out there and be heard. So you're going to see some extreme stances. I'm not sure that everyone in the party or everyone that's running would go to that extreme. But sure, if that continues to move forward, if they continue to kind of follow behind these interest groups on this matter, they could run into some problems.
All right, Justin Gibney, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, John.
Well, the Pentagon may plan to send thousands more troops to the Middle East as tensions with Iran continue to simmer. U.S. Central Command is seeking the additional forces reportedly for defense purposes, not in response to any direct threat. Acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan said he was briefing the president on the plan to help the White House evaluate the situation. Well, as the Trump administration readies to release its Middle East peace plan, America's relationship with Israel could be an even bigger issue for Democrats in 2020. Jenna Browder explains why that has some within the party concerned.
I think what I meant is like the settlements that are increasing.
From Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, how has this administration responded? To Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, younger Democrats coming into Congress are speaking out against Israel and in some cases being called anti-Semitic. It's all causing a big headache for Democratic leadership and the party's 2020 hopefuls who will have to take up the issue on the debate stage.
Absolutely. I think Republicans will make sure it's an issue. I think Jewish Democrats will make sure it's an issue.
A.B. Stoddard with Real Clear Politics says this could create a big opening for Republicans, and Democrats know that.
They're very concerned about the direction of the party, support for the BDS movement, any kind of skepticism of Netanyahu is one thing, but to go beyond that and to question the unbreakable bond, I think, is really going to cause a lot of strife within the party.
As well as potential issues with their own voters. A 2018 Pew Research poll found just 27% of Democrats sympathize with Israel, down from 38% in 2001. And younger voters are dramatically less supportive than older voters.
I think that it's a big internal struggle that they don't want to make too public. They don't want to have the debate be out in the open, but they're working behind the scenes very aggressively to try to make it clear to people that we stand with Israel.
A group of prominent Democrats has formed a pro-Israel group to counter any skepticism, but that may not be enough. And in 2020,
but President Trump, when he runs next year, he's not going to do nuance. He's going to hammer them over this in simplistic terms that will make it very complicated for the Democratic nominee.
Instead of talking about other ideas, Democrats may have to defend and explain themselves on an issue few of them want to address. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
After 17 years in prison, we'll show you what's in store for the so-called American Taliban now that he's been released. Well, the man known as the American Taliban is now free. John Walker Lynn was imprisoned after collaborating with a terrorist who sponsored the September 11th attacks. Today, he was released from prison after serving 17 years out of a 20-year sentence. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips joins us now with more. Eric, the concern now for many tonight is what's next?
Well, John, that's definitely the concern. And most immediately, 38-year-old John Walker Lind will be moving to Northern Virginia, where he will be on a closely monitored 3-year probation. American ally forces captured the Washington, D.C. native during the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, and it was just weeks after the 9/11 attacks. Lind converted to Islam as a teenager and left the U.S. after high school, traveling to the Middle East to study Arabic. He eventually joined the Taliban, which worked closely with al-Qaeda, the terrorist network responsible for 9/11. Lind was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, but was released 2.5 years early for good behavior. That does not sit well with the family of former CIA agent Michael Spann. Spann was shot and killed by militants in Afghanistan just an hour after he questioned Lind.
He is getting released early because of his good behavior in prison. And for my family, terrorism does not equal good behavior.
Don't turn him loose if there's reports out here that he's not being the model prisoner that y'all say he is.
Spann's father there talking about 2 government reports that found Lind, quote, continued to advocate for global jihad and made pro-ISIS statements while behind bars, despite the fact that he condemned terrorism during his sentencing. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo calling Lind's release unexplainable and unconscionable. John.
Eric, clearly he's free, but there has to be some type of stipulations on his probation.
Yeah, there are several stipulations. Software of any kind, anything that he uses to get on the internet must be closely monitored, and all of his online communications must be conducted in English. He also has to undergo mental health counseling. He may not possess extremist material of any kind, and he cannot hold a passport nor leave the U.S.
Eric Phillips, thanks for that update.
Sure.
Well, up next, making a living wage in America. Why some say raising the federal minimum could be bad for the overall economy. Well, welcome back. Many states are taking up the matter of minimum wage. In just 2019 alone, the number of states raising the minimum wage to $15 doubled. Most recently, Connecticut's governor says he'll sign soon legislation approving the move there. So far this year, Illinois, Maryland, and New Jersey have already enacted $15 minimums. And it's become a 2020 rallying cry for Democratic presidential candidates, a number of whom making a $15 federal minimum wage a campaign promise. And as it stands now, the federal minimum wage remains at $7.25 an hour, an amount unchanged since 2009. As Caitlin Burke reports, supporters say raising the minimum wage is necessary to lift millions out of poverty. But critics, including small business owners, argue the wage overhaul could take steam out of an already booming economy.
Like when these things get frozen.
Tom Knapp has always loved cars.
This is a passion of mine in high school. I went to college for it. I went to an automotive college for it.
After earning his degree in automotive management, Knapp ran this shop for 3 years before buying it from his former boss.
I worked at a dealership when I was right out of high school and did not like it. So I knew that private shop was the only way to do it.
As a small business owner, Knapp knew he would face some challenges, like changing technology.
You can't advertise in the newspaper, and radio ads are disgustingly expensive for a small business. So you got to learn how to get yourself out there other ways, and social media has been like the newest thing.
What he didn't expect was the grand bargain, a new Massachusetts state law that went into effect January 1st and requires an increase in the minimum wage.
This year, employers must pay $12 an hour. That will gradually increase over the next 4 years until it reaches $15 an hour.
I was trying to have more employees. The issue is to hire a C-level technician. You can't afford to pay them that much money. That's grossly overpaid for what the job that they do, oil changes and simple things like that. And same way with an office manager. I can't hire someone to answer the phones for that kind of money. It would put me out of business.
2 jobs now likely lost, and dreams of expansion put on hold. Other employers here worry it will mean layoffs or worse. Durgan Park, a Boston restaurant since 1827, when John Quincy Adams was president, closed at the beginning of the year. The owner citing the minimum wage increase as one of the main reasons. Massachusetts didn't start this trend. First came Seattle, then California, New York, Washington, D.C. And now Democrats in Congress want a national $15 minimum wage.
We now have an opportunity and a responsibility to restore the value of the minimum wage, lift millions of hardworking Americans out of poverty, and boost the economy of Main Street America.
There's deep partisan divide on the issue. Democrats pushing for the Raise the Wage bill to move forward through Congress. Republicans calling it a radical idea from the far left.
They don't know what's happening in the economy right now. They're obviously detached. Unemployment is at its lowest level in 49 years. Wages are up. The economy is booming. Everywhere I go in my district, people are saying what we need are more skilled workers. We have 7.3 million jobs unfilled in this country.
Scott says the increase would simply provide someone the basic essentials of living in the U.S.
Workers should not be forced to work for poverty-level wages regardless of where they live.
But Representative Fox points out that only 2.3% of American workers make minimum wage.
Minimum wage jobs are launching pads to go into other jobs that will pay a lot more. I doubt very many of us who are now working didn't start out at minimum wage. But the idea is not to stay at minimum wage all your life, but to move up.
The Raise the Wage Act is expected to eventually pass the House, but will likely hit a roadblock in the Republican-held Senate. While that may stop a national minimum wage hike, employers in states like Massachusetts must grapple with the consequences.
I'm hoping that the volume eventually increases and I can just put it off for a little while longer, but honestly, it's probably more a situation where I'll have to continue working in the business and continue doing the jobs myself.
Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Boston, Massachusetts.
Nik Wallenda plans his next daring walk across the tightrope. We'll show you where and with whom he plans to do it when we come back.
Your paycheck. Your family depends on it. But if something happened to you, you need life insurance. And chances are SelectQuote can get it for you for under $1 a day.
SelectQuote found Alec, 38, a $500,000 policy for under $23 a month. SelectQuote found Kenesha, 37, a $750,000 policy for under $23 a month.
SelectQuote's secret? They impartially shop a select group of highly rated companies like these for your best rates. Give your family the security it needs at a price you can afford.
Since 1985, SelectQuote has saved over 1 million families millions of dollars on life insurance. Call now, 800-546-8380, or go to SelectQuote.com. Discover what over 1 million families know. We shop, you save.
At Timeshare Exit Team, we've helped thousands of people get out of their timeshares forever. When you go to a timeshare presentation, they sell you on this promise that you're going to get the vacation of your dreams. Unfortunately, that's not always the case.
The timeshare didn't deliver what they promised in the presentation whatsoever.
Booking the vacations that I wanted was absolutely impossible.
I can't rent it, I can't sell it, I can't do anything with it.
Getting somebody out of a timeshare contract is not easy. It definitely takes some time.
In the meeting with Timeshare Exit Team, they were very upfront. It was low pressure.
You do not have to worry about it. Once it's in their hands, you're done with it.
At Timeshare Exit Team, we guarantee we will get you out of your timeshare contract or we'll give you your money back.
I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders.
Timeshare Exit Team sent us a letter saying that we're free and clear of the timeshare. So it was a time to celebrate.
If you're unhappy with your timeshare, we would love to help you find a way out.
For a free consultation, go to 321exit.com or call 800-215-0453. That's 800-215-0453.
And finally tonight, famed high-wire walker Nik Wallenda is planning his next stunt. He and his sister announcing today they will take on Times Square, 25 stories above ground. The June walk will be the first for Liana Wallenda since a 2017 fall. Her brother says it's a testament to the Wallenda tradition of never giving up. Over the years, the Wallendas have used their tightrope performances as a way to preach the gospel. During one national broadcast, Nik says he prayed the whole way across the high wire, calling the experience peaceful, saying, quote, "I trust in Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. That's where I find my peace, the peace that surpasses all understanding." I'm not sure everyone would say that's peaceful, but thank you for joining us for this edition of Faith Nation. We hope to see you back here again tomorrow.